But we are expecting, and we do have, I believe, a live report from Cuba right now.
Yes, we have Patrick Ottman, a correspondent based there in Cuba. We see what's happening around you. Tell us, what are you experiencing there, Patrick?
We are still experiencing very powerful gusts, some of the most powerful gusts we've felt in quite some time. The rain is blowing in sideways. And just to give you an idea, this town that is on the coast has actually been overtaken by the sea. We're in about 4 feet of water where we are. We are on the second floor. The water continues to rise. So for many of the people who live in Calle Verry, Cuba, who do not have a house that goes this high, that have a smaller house, first story house, they've lost everything. The flooding here has probably damaged or destroyed tens if not hundreds of houses. I'm sure there are many more towns along the coast in this situation. So a very bad night and bad morning for Cuba, and we really won't have an idea of the terrible extent of the damage until the sun comes up.
And Patrick, I heard you say earlier that the government tried to evacuate some people. I also heard you say that some people were taking refuge inside caves. Were most people able to get out? Were a lot left behind and are now dealing with what you're dealing with there?
You know, I don't know if when it got bad last night, if people rethought their decision to stay here. There were many people who said they were going to ride it out, that they were not afraid. They'd been here for other storms. You know, remember, all the forecasts seemed to indicate that Cuba was not going to get a direct strike, and yet that's what happened, a devastating Category 5 making a direct strike on this island. So it was not the glancing blow that perhaps many thought it could have been, that not as serious as what we received, but make no doubt about it, you know, this is a catastrophic hurricane for Cuba, and for the people who stayed here, stayed in their homes and did not evacuate, I am sure they're regretting it now.
And Patrick, we here in Florida, our main concern right now and the message we are pushing to the people of the Florida Keys is to get out while they can. In Cuba, their own section of Keys, so to speak, Los Cayos, the archipelago of Camagüey, and that's where this storm is really moving over right now. What's it like on those islands on a good day, and can any of the structures out there survive what this is bringing upon them?
They'll be heavily damaged. Luckily, most Cubans don't live on those keys. Those are for tourists. Those are tourist hotels out there. I'm not aware of too many populations of people who live out there, and they would have certainly been evacuated. The Cuban government got all the tourists off the islands in the last several days. They know how dangerous this is, and they were trying to get people going up and down the street, house to house, trying to get people to evacuate from these areas. I think looking back, perhaps the storm hit much harder than people expected. You know, Cubans have experiences with strong storms, but I don't think anyone's had an experience with a storm like this. It's absolutely overwhelming. All night long, the wind has screamed, and just when you think it dies down, it comes back up again, and we're hearing debris go by. Water is coming in the wall behind us, and you know, this is the strongest house in the town, and it's coming apart.
Patrick, what's fascinating is that we see the direction of the wind because of the palm front, but if you look closely, the rain is going in every which way. It's really wild to see that behind you. Patrick, I've had the chance to be in Cuba 3 times for work, and I've been in Havana, the urban center of Cuba. I've also been out to Pinar del Rio and Sandino, some very small towns, and Sandino, a farm community, really. What are these areas like? How populated are they, and are they mostly agricultural areas or more urban areas?
So I think Sandino and western Pinar del Rio, they're as far from the storm as you can hope to be. Havana is a concern now because the storm did come in very powerfully and is having a lot more damage than perhaps many people had hoped. I don't know if hurricane winds will reach Havana, but you know, Havana is a city where if you have a good rain, it can lead to buildings collapsing. So you know, any kind of heavy rain, and we've heard that as of last night there was heavy rain in Havana and the fear of some storm surge, you know, that's going to have an impact. Here, these small coastal communities, this is devastating. And you know, for the people who work and live here, they work out of the hotels where tourists go. Those hotels are going to be closed for a long, long time. because I'm sure they were just devastated. It's going to take a long time to repair them and bring them back. And as well, for the people who didn't evacuate, they lost probably some of the most prized possessions. We saw yesterday people evacuating mattresses and TVs and computers on horse and carts. So, people were taking away the few possessions they have, and if you're somebody who had your house as it is now under 4 feet of water, you've lost everything.
Sure, those are things that are hard to come by there, especially. When I've been there, I've seen those buildings, and many of them are crumbling on a perfectly clear, sunny day, and you see the electric wires all over the place. You see lots of construction on the streets. I remember that very clearly. Did the government try to do anything, or did any organization try to do anything to minimize what could happen now with the storm to those streets that were under construction, to the power lines, to the buildings, anything of that nature, or just evacuate people and that's it?
They evacuate people and they pre-place materials, resources, building supplies. So as soon as this storm passes, you will start to see the Cuban government come into these areas and begin the recovery efforts, but it's going to be a very long recovery effort.
And Patrick, just looking at the image right now of the storm, the satellite image, it's looking like it's stretching from north to south in that region of Cuba where it is currently hammering. So when you say evacuation, where are these people evacuated to? Because it seems like the entire country, the whole island, is going to feel at least a little bit of this storm.
You hope to go to some place where it's going to be less affected. So the family whose house we're staying in right now, the father, the grandfather are still behind. The gentleman who owns this house, he sent his wife and small children to be with relatives further inland where they're going to not have the storm surge, which of course is the most dangerous part of a hurricane. And so people go stay with relatives, they go to shelters, they can even go, excuse me, into caves in the mountain or old bomb shelters. The Cuban government said they had evacuated hundreds of thousands of people. With the tourists, they took them either to the far ends of the island to the east, to Santiago de Cuba, or to Havana to the west, where you might still feel an impact, but it's not going to be this. It's not going to be this Category 4 winds that we are feeling right now. So at least you are going to be, if not entirely out of harm's way, much, much safer.
Patrick, thank you. And before we let you go, on a personal note, I had the chance to meet your wife when I was in Cuba. A lovely lady. Was she able to get out? I know you have 2 small children that live there as well with you.
Yes, my wife is from Panama, and we made the decision a few days ago. Thank you for asking about her. That it would be best if she and our 4 kids went there. It's a lovely country, and hurricanes don't go there. So they're safe and sound, and we'll see what happens with our house in Havana. But certainly for the people who live in Kirincaibarrién, a devastating storm.